begins her presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. DeQueer, and to Dr. Pogue. To all of you who are gathered today, it's an exciting time, especially for researchers. And my research agenda, not by choice, but by calling, was given to me back in 1994. I had just finished my master's at Grambling State University in Grambling, Louisiana, where our motto was and is a place where everybody is somebody. Today, here is our agenda. I'm going to move this way so I won't block persons. How many of you can sing, lift every voice and sing? Meaning on key, to get us on key. We're just going to sing a little bit of it because it's an extensive song and it would take a little bit of the presentation time. So may I see our singers again, if you would rise for us? If you don't want to rise, just give us so you would. Well, I want to. Can you? Yeah, because I need you to do that part of it to get us on cue. And yes, that is the tradition. And you can follow the rest of it, but I'm going to show it on here, and everyone should be able to sing it. Just a little bit of history if you don't know about this song. This song was written for President Abraham Lincoln's birthday back in February 1900, if you will. And he was gone by then, but this gentleman, James Weldon Johnson, he was the president at a school, a principal, and he had his students to recite the poem first. 5 years later, his brother would set it to music, and that is how we come up with this song, which in the African American community is considered a sacred song that is sung at every event. It used to be that way. We don't do it quite often, but today we're just going to again sing the first verse. What's your name, young lady? Aja. She is going to help us start on cue. She's going to help us start on cue. So the floor is yours.
Okay. All right. Lift every voice and sing
till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Thank you so much. Let's give her a hand. And again, if you wish to reflect more and sing all of it, we would encourage you to do that. We're stopping at "Let us march on till victory is won" because if you know anything about the history of Albany, Georgia, she was a central player in the modern day civil rights movement, known as the Albany movement. And students from Albany State College were instrumental in sparking that movement. They didn't sit in this building. The building didn't exist at that time, but there was a special group of them, and they gave up their educational careers. If you did not know, they were booted out. They were expelled. They marched on till victory was won. So we need a backdrop for why they had to march till a part of the victory was won. Everyone should be familiar with this image, at least part of it. It is the image of millions of years ago when the land itself was in harmony, was together. This is what they projected, if you will, that the land looked like. You can see us over here, the United States of America, and right here might be a little bit difficult with the lighting, but this is the part of Africa that, for some of you may not know, is still embedded underneath parts of Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. So there is land from the part of Africa on the west coast that is underneath the United States. So we're still together even though the water separates us, and I think that's an interesting geological fact. Anyway, 300 years today, we can see all of the boundaries that have been placed by man. We didn't have Russia and China and the United States and Algeria and Antarctica all of those years ago. Once we came into being, we found it necessary to devise a way for us to live together. We can't necessarily say that we've done the best job at it just yet. And why? I need my biology majors to raise your hands. Even though you're in education, no one else from biology? Biology education?
Well, I was a bio major 3 years before I switched to education.
Okay, just a little biology for humans. What is the strongest urge of a biological organism? Anyone? Self-preservation, to survive. And we are at a place in our history as humans where we are still way back in the evolutionary chain. And that is, we kill each other, we fight each other, we harm each other for self-preservation. And that's something that, come on, Veronica. I'm a sensitive spirit, so here. When we think about all of the human life lost because we're trying to survive, we have to come to a point when self-preservation really means living and working together. It really has to. With that being the case, we have to examine history, and we have to educate about history, because if you don't know history, you may what? Be doomed to repeat it. The transatlantic triangular enslavement trade, or some people will call it the slave trade. It was not the only slave trade in history, but this particular trade was special because the will to survive meant we are going to create a business and economy on human trafficking. If you go into a bus station today or a bathroom, you're going to see a sign, right? And it says, if you know about human trafficking, to do what? To call this hotline, to report it. Well, centuries ago, we didn't have anything like that in place for Native Americans, for African Americans, and for other groups that may have been trafficked here to the United States or in other parts of that Middle Passage. And most people may not know that the United States only got a small percentage of that diaspora. Many of them were taken to the Caribbean islands, to the West Indies. It is a horrible history, but out of everything can come some beauty, and that is the hope of healing together. That is the hope of healing together. Point 5 says, until today, as we sit here today, there has been no comparable, integrated, systematic approach to healing or redressing the harm that was put into creating the economic system. Now just imagine your hair, your clothing, your diet, your everything, when you slept, when you couldn't marry, when you couldn't read, when you everything was systematically controlled. If you can imagine that, imagine this. Where is the system that heals all of that trauma that people endured at that time up till now? Because of time, I can't get into all of what we've learned. The CDC, our Center for Disease Control, has a new program of sorts over the last decade or two that talks about trauma healing and resiliency. And doctors and psychologists and sociologists and all the bio people now know what people knew millions of years ago if they existed in thought. You can't take an organism and have experiences and not have those experiences shape their DNA. It is embedded biologically, genetically within. And if you don't have interventions, if some of you've watched on cable, a person may be struggling with alcohol abuse or drug addiction, and friends and family will do what? They'll call in an intervention, and they'll have the person, we'll use you, may we?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And your people are gathered, and they'll say all the things that, they want for you in life. And you may be responding there, shaking your head, I want it too, I want it too. But what happens when all of what was inside overrides that desire? There's a long-term process that has to happen. Here, the Artesian Renaissance is one possibility for healing, just one possibility. It is a healing narrative and a restoration process. It's two things in one. First, it is undoing the narrative that says, woe unto those who were enslaved. There is a song, I'm going to call on our chorus leader here. But songs are an important part of this whole movement. Oh, freedom. Do you know that? Oh, freedom? Give us one verse of that. Oh, freedom.
Oh, freedom.
Yes.
Oh, freedom.
Yes.
Oh, freedom over me.
Yes.
And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, Dr. Hood. She's over our music department, fine arts department. That song speaks of the shame if you had been enslaved. I'm a witness. I'm a descendant of former enslaved African Americans. And I am not ashamed of it because I am the fulfillment of their prayers, their hopes, and their desires, that even though they may have suffered all of that they did, that one day I could stand before you and present this information. Now there's a new song. I was given a new song to share with the world. So we need you again to help us. Yes, this is education. This is retraining. Carter G. Woodson for Black History Week, which is now Black History Month in February. The miseducation of the Negro. The re-education of the Negro. The re-education of humanity. The words are different. The words are, oh triumph, oh triumph, oh triumph. But what it says is this: we now honor the enslaved. We honor them. Why? If they had not survived that economic system in place, Great Britain, and this is world history, and we can't do all that in this lecture today, but we would not have the United States. We would not have Wall Street. We would not have the Lords of London and all of those economic systems that control our everyday lives. Now, I know it's the big picture, if you will, but what just happened? For 35 days, right, we lost $6 billion. Where did that $6 billion go to? It's just gone, right? Well, just imagine the labor of all of those souls. They work day in, they work day out, they work day in, day out for months, years, decades, and I hate to even think centuries. But there may have been people born into slavery, they lived 100 years, and they never saw freedom. Oh my goodness. Okay. I have an artifact here. The Peculiar Institution. Mandatory reading someday. Slavery in the antebellum South. And I need a timer because I don't want to overgo time, but I have to read this part right here. There are people who propose that the African American experience, out of all of the enslavement experiences coming out of the TTET, was the worst. These are two reports that speak to that. Well, over those 400 years, up until today, this year too, there has been that march for victory. Some people will say we didn't achieve it, and some people will say we did. But I want to read this real quickly. I have it bookmarked so I would find it. The chapter that ends says, "He who has endured." Today is the anniversary of American independence. I want you to know that the American independence is part of the Great Experiment. Got 5 minutes. The Great Experiment. The Great Experiment goes back to that global map. How do we find a system of life where all people would have the opportunity for fairness, justice, and equality? The world at that time, around 1776-ish, did not have that. We had dictatorships, we had kingships, we had other type of government systems. We are still new. American democracy, and she's not perfect, but she's getting there. This is what he says, real quickly. The Northern abolitionists are threatening and planning to take away or destroy the value of our slave property and the demon democracy by its leveling principles, universal suffrage, and numerous popular elections. Homestead laws and bribery are sapping the foundations of the rights of property in everything. This is from a Southern planter in South Carolina in 1856. He's lamenting that things are a-changing, that we can't own people anymore, that it's an aberration, and humanity. A year later, a book is written by William Edward Smith. I'm trying to locate it. A year later, he writes a book called Divine Democracy. I have not seen the contents. I only know the book is titled Divine Democracy. But I would equate divine democracy with a system of government where all have an equal opportunity. And I believe that has been achieved in America partly through that march till victory is won. If you go through American government, you will not see any aspect of it that does not include the enslaved person's experience or the African American experience. Real quickly, this is a poem that's going to be music theorized. Dr. Hood and I have talked preliminarily, if that's the right word usage, in preliminary stages for her and the students here at Albany State to actually make this into a song. I have a few melodies on it, but okay. We're just going to pass up on that. Yeah. So 2 minutes. Now, as a descendant, I had a responsibility. Before my paternal grandmother leaves, and she used to tell me stories about growing up, and my nickname was Ronnie, and she said, our people don't want to talk about that. And she was talking about that, meaning this experience, and she was talking about people in her age group. And she said, I want you to write about that. Now, at the time, I thought she was talking about writing about the Addams family story. And then one day it hit me with the work that I was given and this. I was like, I wonder if Grandmama knew that I was having to do all of these things. But long story short, it is January 6, 2018, and I'm on the computer. Faculty don't get a rest. It's a Saturday evening, I believe, or Friday evening. And there's an invitation in my email, my ASU Rams email. Do you want to write on the 400 Years of African American History Act? I'm like, oh, this is a joke, you know? But it wasn't. In 2018, on that Monday, President Donald Trump signed into law that we would commemorate as a nation the arrival in 1619 in Virginia of a group of Africans, and we would say the rest is history. There is the notion that their arrival was the first for Africans, but history will tell you that Africans dispersed throughout the earth in many waves. So they were already here, and in other places they were already here. This is the chapter in the Global Encyclopedia of my field, and there's a specific clause. I've done a content analysis, and there's only one time that this clause appears: to acknowledge the impact that slavery and laws that enforce racial discrimination had on the United States. Out of all of those words, that's the only phrase where you will see this. I don't know why, but anyway. So it supported the work that I had been given since 1994. Be ye ready for when the moment comes. We've been working on trauma healing for a long time, and we are here today. So the restorative development movement is this: in community and economic development, when you restore natural, built, and social environments. We just had Hurricane Michael, right? And we have expended all this money on removing the trees and rebuilding homes, right? Well, we are more important than trees and homes. Yeah, we are. So when we see health disparities, when we see criminal justice disparities, educational achievement disparities, those things need FEMA dollars too. Okay, just to use the example. There was a Johnson & Johnson Band-Aid commercial. You might have seen it a few years ago. The little sister is playing the nurse and the baby brother has a wound with a Band-Aid. Remove a Band-Aid real fast. Okay? It's hurtful. She built this contraption to distract him, right? So she could remove it to see if it was healed or whatever. Or if you've seen a movie where someone has to get a bullet removed, they put that thing in their mouth where they give them some liquor so it would deaden the pain. Well, we wanted something that would be creative, it would be healthful, healthy, and the arts and the humanities can do that. When we sing songs together, when we write poems, when we write short stories, when we do plays, when we do all of those creative things to get all of that stuff out, and when we do it in a setting together, and then when you have food, and then when you have dance, you have a celebration. And that's what we hope we can do with the Artesian Renaissance and this federal law that says what? We have to acknowledge the pain of the past. And what better way to do that than through the arts and the humanities? I'm out of time. Thank you. I don't know if y'all can do question and answers at a later time, but thank you so much.